Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Welcome back, everybody. I'm going to get right into it here. This might be the only subject of the episode, so if this bothers you, my apologies, but there's a lot to cover here regarding the Ohio primary, how it went down, and a lot of the I'm just going to call them flat out lies that just exist again on social media regarding the entire thing and the people getting involved who, again, don't even live here. That's the part that really is disturbing. And again, you're seeing an establishment take place here that is beyond corrupt. And it's beyond disappointing, I think, that even Ohioans can't see this. Because, again, they voted for Vivek Ramaswamy, and he's a fraud at face value. So I'm going to start with this first, and then I'm going to get into my particular post a little bit later, and then some of the reaction to a post that I made on X, which, again, I hate using the word viral, but it's the biggest post that I've ever made over on X, and it got the most traction of any post I've ever made, so I'm going to read it and then some of the reaction to it. But first, this is from Casey Putsch. Again, he ran for governor against Vivek Ramaswamy, and he was the better of the two without a doubt. He's a real Ohioan, again. He works. He's not a billionaire. And he ran with $120,000. That was based off of basic donations, his own money. That's the very definition of the thing that most Americans, again, always long for, is the grassroots, quote-unquote, person who lives in the state and cares about the quality of the state and the people who live in the state legally. He, of course, was the only one also going after fraud. He was the only one on the entire campaign trail, so to speak, mentioning fraud. Also, of course, the Republican establishment didn't want him to debate Vivek Ramaswamy because Vivek Ramaswamy would have lost that debate. Hands down, overwhelmingly, he would have lost it. Because Casey would have highlighted all of the fraud that Vivek has engaged in throughout his entire life. And the Ohio establishment doesn't want people to know that. Because the Ohio establishment also doesn't want individuals to do their own individual thinking and their own individual research and dive into who these people actually are. They just want you to listen to a Donald Trump endorsement from well over a year ago, and Donald Trump again stayed quiet about everything throughout the entire campaign. He didn't post about Vivek Ramaswamy. I mean, he just never did. He stayed out of it by and large. But then, of course, he posts that Vivek Ramaswamy won, and that's great, and blah, 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 and okay, fine. It doesn't mean anything. And I'll get into the business of bullshit endorsements a little bit later, because they're fraudulent too, and they shouldn't matter, and no one should care about an endorsement. But it was beyond obvious that Casey Putsch, again, was the candidate that most Americans, by and large, would want in a position like this, certainly in the day and age of constant fraud. Instead, Ohioans voted for a fraudster, a known fraudster. Here's a post again on X from Casey Putsch, and this would have been, I believe, Wednesday evening. He said the following: "A few items of note. I will post a final video this week. I cannot legally run as an independent. I have a baby due in 2 weeks and have to go back to working for a living. My wife lost her job 3 weeks ago, and we are just as afraid of tomorrow as millions of Americans. From what I can see, the economy of politics now is only the investor class to buy politicians and controlled opposition at any higher level. This is facilitated by a sold-out machine and perpetuated by groupthink. At this time, I am a free man and speak for the betterment of all Americans and the God's honest truth. I do not fully understand what is going on out there now. I was genuine opposition, and I fear the only value I have now is as a target in a race to see who can destroy or discredit me first for political gain or find a method of control. This is a dangerous omen in America. I will disavow no Americans, but I don't trust talking heads. Some far more than others. Many are just pure acid. I in no way, shape, or form support the Democrat Party or its candidates, including Amy Acton. At this time, I will abstain from supporting the Republican Party as they have sold us out. I concede the primary election to Vivek, but just because he won doesn't mean that he suddenly stopped being a globalist Trojan horse. I will not vote for him. Putsch. Good. Again, that's an American post from an American who ran against a globalist piece of shit. The brainwashing here is very, very real. It's overwhelming. The entire campaign, this so-called Alex Trantafilou, or whatever the hell his name is, the chairman of the Ohio Republican Party, this guy, again, is clearly bought and sold. His X account on all of his posts always had the comments section turned off, so you couldn't reply. You couldn't say anything. That's censorship. That's communism. And that's coming from the Republican Party in Ohio. This should bother people. It should bother everybody. He turned off his comments section because, again, he's not running for office, so he can. But Vivek Ramaswamy, again, in the comments section on X was getting torched. He was absolutely getting torched all of the time. Now, what I did is I made a post on X, again, just sort of laying it out based on what Ohioans apparently can't figure out. And they apparently haven't figured this out since 2020. But I made this post, and here's what I said. My take on Vivek Ramaswamy winning, quote unquote, here in Ohio. I live here, and Ohioans have learned nothing. When someone endorses someone else, it means nothing. You're supposed to think for yourself, do your own research, and make an informed vote. That is not what Ohioans did. They simply voted for whomever Donald Trump and J.D. Vance endorsed. That is not being an informed voter. Vivek should be in jail for what he's done. Scamming people out of millions, profiting from the COVID lie, and participating in the destruction of Ohio businesses back in 2020 and beyond. Ohioans have amnesia, apparently, and they can't read. One simple search into Vivek's past, and it's all fraud, not to mention his ties to Wexner, Soros, Gates, and others should be alarming, but apparently not for Ohioans. When any candidate, like Vivek, pretends that they aren't running against someone else, that means they're spitting in your face through their mouth of entitlement. He believes that he deserves to be governor of Ohio, but yet he's done nothing for Ohio, nor Ohioans. If you think that will change, it won't. When a candidate never brings up fraud, yet fraud is the only thing people should be caring about right now, that means that candidate is a fraudster. When another candidate brings up fraud and wants to hold those fraudsters accountable, then you vote for the candidate that brings up fraud and wants to hold the fraudsters accountable. It's not that hard to figure out. Vivek received 673,902 votes, which was 82.5%, certainly of the Republican vote. Casey Putsch received 143,257 votes, or 17.5% of the vote. Only one candidate was talking about fraud and going after Ohio politicians who are fraudsters. That person was Casey Putsch. That means that 17.5% of Ohioans want accountability and the other 82.5% are fine with fraud and a fraudster leading the way. This is not a recipe for success. This is a recipe for more fraud in a failed state. Now, Ohio can expect the following: more foreigners, less jobs for Ohioans, a worse education system that benefits foreigners and Indians, higher taxes, more data centers, more pollution, higher cost of living, and zero accountability. All Ohio did is vote for a brown Mike DeWine. I won't stop exposing this fraud until I'm dead. When Vivek gets into office without my vote, I will continue to expose his fraud until 82.5% of the Ohio brain-dead meatballs wake the fuck up, back to work, unquote. I want to thank the people for moving that post around. I greatly appreciate it. And a great deal of people, of course, agreed with me. As of right now, it has, 28,000 plus views, 2,400 likes, and 230 comments. Now, let me get into some of these comments. And again, it's too many to read specifically, of course, but most, again, individuals firmly agree. And then the ones that don't are getting destroyed and getting attacked, which is fine. Because, again, they don't know what they're talking about. Again, when it comes to endorsements, they're useless. They mean nothing. That's communism. That's follow the leader. That's not thinking for yourself. That's not independent. That's not American. The other problem is that less than half of all registered voters actually voted in Ohio. So people just didn't know, apparently, that there was a primary. They just didn't care. This is pathetic. The other part, too, is that one of the comments openly said, and this is a woman from Cleveland, she said she voted for Casey Puch, and the only reason that she knew that Casey Puch was running against Vivek was because she was on X, because she has an X account. That no newspaper, no media outlet, no TV commercial, no YouTube ad, nothing was showing that Casey Puch was running against Vivek Ramaswamy. That means you have an establishment who's trying to undermine you as an American and as an Ohioan. You have an establishment that's doing the thinking for you. This is brainwashing. This is control. And it's horrible. There were also all these other posts all over X of these nobodies who don't live here, bashing Casey Puch and congratulating Vivek Ramaswamy, like Laura Loomer, who I detest. She's a horrible human being. If she fell off a bridge, no one would bat an eye. They'd just smile and go about their day. But Laura Loomer, again, who gets paid by the Jewish lobby to post what she posts on X, that's how she makes a living, by catering to them and bending the knee. She openly said something to the tune of, "See, I told you so, X isn't real. X isn't reality. What goes on X isn't reality." She was basically commenting on the fact that on X, most people were bashing Vivek Ramaswamy, and rightfully so. That in the comments section of all of Vivek's posts, he was getting destroyed, and rightfully so. People were doing real research on Vivek Ramaswamy. And they dug up his entire past and exposed it to everybody on X. The problem is it never got past that. Certain videos, of course, and articles were written and a number of other things, even throughout Ohio. But it didn't matter because the brain-dead meatballs in this state just do whatever they're told by somebody else whom they've never met. They just vote down ballot all the time. I'm going to pick the first name on every Republican ballot at the top, and if I don't recognize someone's name, then that means that I shouldn't vote for them. Instead of course, looking at the names of the people that they don't recognize and doing a little research and a little thinking. This is too hard for Ohioans, apparently. But when Laura Loomer says that X isn't reality, she's right. But not in the way she thinks. As it turns out, reality is far worse than what goes on social media. It's far worse. Case in point, this. In Indiana, on primary day, people on social media after, of course, the primary, they were openly saying that it was a red wave throughout Indiana. That the rhinos were all destroyed in Indiana, Republican in name only, and that real Americans who are living in Indiana and work off of the land and blah, 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 that they ended up winning political positions. And that these individuals, again, were spitting in the face of the establishment, and the establishment lost. That's what they were saying about Indiana. Now, I don't believe that. But if that happened, it didn't happen in Ohio, and that's where people immediately stopped talking about Ohio. Because, of course, they don't live here. Literally every establishment candidate, by and large, on the Ohio ballot won. Every single one of them did. All the rhinos, all the people who have had all of this fraud happen on their watch and they've done nothing about it, they all won. Robert Sprague won as Secretary of State. He was the treasurer. He did jack squat as treasurer. He did absolutely nothing. He's weak and feckless. Marcel Sturbich lost. Marcel Sturbich was the only one talking about fraud. He was the only one who wanted to backlog and go into the logs as far back as possible on this fraud, specifically Somali fraud, voter fraud, all of it, uproot all of it and expose all of it and hold people accountable. But he didn't have any TV commercials because the fat meatballs in Ohio sit around and watch TV And if a politician comes on the commercial, then they go, well, I'm going to vote for that person. Well, you're an idiot. Because now what you just did is you just voted for the fraudsters to continue their fraud and cover it up. And that's what they're going to do. That's why they rotate. It's like volleyball. Time to rotate, and then all the players just rotate, and they all play a different position within government. People haven't figured this out. Vivek, again, plays volleyball in that regard. Ran for president, didn't get hardly a single vote, only Indians voted for him, got kicked out of Doge because he's trying to profit from somebody else's work, because he's a fraudster, and that's what fraudsters do. And then he hightails it with his tail between his legs from Washington, D.C. back to Ohio and says, I'm going to run for governor. And then that's it. He kicks people out of his lectures. He kicked people out of his lectures for asking questions. He kept people from coming into his lectures who were adults and taxpayers who wanted to ask him real questions. And of course, they know far more than a college student who's staring at their cell phone all day long and doesn't read anything and doesn't think and just shows up at these lectures for TPUSA, which is fraudulent in itself. And then they hand select individuals within the TPUSA lectures to only ask softball bullshit questions. This is communism. This is mind control. That's what this is, and that's what that was. There are still too many people who are voting on party line because they think that this is a game. I voted for the red team. All my red team guys won. This isn't a game. People in the comments section also brought up Byron Donalds, the congressman who's running for governor in Florida. And a Floridian, again, commented and they said, we have a Byron Donalds problem here. He has a Donald Trump endorsement and no one down here likes him. But people will vote for him because Donald Trump said to. Again, that's not thinking as an individual American. That's the problem. It just continues to be a massive issue. And then people wonder why their taxes increase and why their property taxes are through the roof and getting worse. They wonder why schools are constantly leaning on more and more levies. Again, Vivek ran on this also, that I'm going to, what did he say? I'm going to lower your income tax and then we're going to eliminate it. That we're going to eliminate income tax. What does that ultimately mean? It means you're going to be taxed another way through the back door. When a particular tax is eliminated, it just means they raise it somewhere else. More schools will start, again, clamoring for money to pay their administrators more money. There was also an issue on the ballot. I'm going to get back to Vivek here in a minute, but there was also an issue on the Ohio ballot having to do with the disabled. That disabled healthcare and disabled facilities and whatever, facilities for the disabled are struggling financially. No, they're not. They're mismanaging their money. And they went to the ballot and they asked for more money and it won. I voted no. Because I hate taxes and I hate stupid people who don't know how to manage their money. People don't understand that that's exactly what tax levies are. They're not going to help the person that the people who created the levy in the first place say it's going to help. School tax levies don't go to the kids, quote unquote. Levies for the disabled and disabled facilities and what have you don't go to the disabled. They go to the people at the top. That money goes to the people at the top to line their pockets more than they already are. And then years later, they'll come back for another one. And they laugh and they scheme and they rub their hands together and they say, I can't believe the people are so stupid that they keep giving us more money and we keep pocketing it. People apparently don't understand this. Now, just for a minute, I'm going to tear into Nick Fuentes. He doesn't know who I am. He doesn't care, and I don't care about him. He's a piece of shit as far as I'm concerned. But Nick Fuentes was again complimenting Casey Butch, and then the day of the primary was making fun of him and stabbing him in the back. saying Vivek's going to slaughter him. He's not going to win, blah, blah, blah. And then he comes back around and he says, but Putsch made some inroads in XYZ, mispronouncing his last name the entire time. So not only does Nick Fuentes live in the communist state of Illinois, he doesn't live in Ohio, he can't pronounce Casey Putsch's name correctly, and he thinks he has it all figured out, so much so that he's asking people to vote for Amy Acton, that she's the worst of the two, the lesser of two evils, as it were. I don't give a damn who people vote for. I'm not voting. It isn't going to happen. These are not choices that we have here. They just aren't. It's communism. If there's ever a person on the ballot who wants to go after fraud and hold the guilty accountable, including politicians, that's the person I vote for every time. But that's not happening here. That's not what this is. I want to read you a quick quote. Again, Niccolo Machiavelli, from his book The Prince, to, of course, the letter that he wrote to the Prince of Italy, openly saying, hey, look, bro, make sure you do things correctly, and here are some ways that you can do things correctly or Italy is screwed. He said, quote, he who has once begun to live by robbery will always find pretexts for seizing what belongs to others, unquote. That's Vivek in a nutshell. That's exactly who he is. He's a robber, and he steals from people, and he's just going to keep stealing from people. Another person commented on my post, and they basically said this, that Ohio University, and they showed the receipts, Ohio University just hired 2 H-1B visas from India for 2 counseling positions at the university level. Guess what they're paying them? They're paying them way less than what a university counselor would typically make. They're paying these 2 counselors $40-some-odd thousand apiece. A university counselor position, again, is upwards of $70,000 at least, which means that's 2 H-1B visa positions at the university level that could have gone to Ohioans. But Ohio University wants to save a little money. So they hire 2 foreigners who don't know any better and have no idea that they could have been making more money if they were just, again, your average Ohio citizen. But they're being given a handout and a hand up at the expense of Ohioans. And that's a game, by the way, that's being played by the left. The left plays that game too. And so does Vivek Ramaswamy. Again, this guy has been placed here. He's a placeholder. He was chosen by a very corrupt establishment. So on Tuesday, the establishment in Ohio won. And all of the people running against the establishment lost. That's the takeaway. The establishment exists on both sides, but in a state that is primarily red most of the time, that establishment is going to be corrupt right-wingers. That's the way that it goes. Again, 2 heads of the same snake. I want to give a little history lesson, too, on Ohio, certainly when it came to Obama and when Obama was in office and when Obama ran. I live in Butler County. It's the county right above Hamilton County, which is where Cincinnati is. Butler County, if memory serves, was a blue county, but only once. And that's when Obama ran. Because people actually still play this game. They play the race game. I'll vote for Obama because he's different than George Bush. I'm tired of George Bush and that establishment, so I'll vote for the brown guy because I don't want to be seen as being a racist. This is actually how people think. That's why Obama won. Because people, again, in working environments and everywhere else, when they were being asked, who are you voting for, they're like, well, there's a brown guy on the ticket. There's never been a brown guy before, so let's vote for him. Because, again, if they're asked the question in the working environment, they don't want to be perceived as being a racist. Well, I voted for John McCain. Well, you didn't vote for the brown guy. What's wrong with you? I mean, it's just nuts. And then people are just like, I don't vote based off of skin color. Nonsense. Look what happened on Tuesday. It was the same game. It was the same ploy. Vivek Ramaswamy doesn't reference Jesus Christ as God. He denies it completely. He worships multiple gods. Again, what's going on here? People in the comments section too on my post, here's one of them. It said this: I haven't found anyone that voted for Vivek yet. Everybody I know voted Casey. I find it odd that the media outlets called him the winner 10 minutes after the polls closed. Again, was there voter fraud? Probably. Which means all this secure election bullshit is just that. It's bullshit. Not to mention, again, which I said earlier and I've said in previous episodes, any single time, and I said it in the post, of course, but any single time that an individual who is running in a primary doesn't even recognize nor acknowledge the individual that they're running against, then they're spitting in your face because they think that you're stupid. That you somehow have some blind allegiance to them and them only, and that you don't understand how a constitutional republic is supposed to work. And no, it's not a democracy. However, it's starting to look like a democracy, and that's frightening. Because it's mob rule. And the mob is on the right and the left at the same time. People, again, who don't live here were on X, and they were sharing the same meme. They were sharing the same map of Ohio, the same picture. Laura Loomer was, Corey DeAngelis, that idiot. I mean, just all these, again, so-called right-wing losers. I mean, they're insufferable, these people. They're so dumb, and they comment on things they know nothing about. But they're all sharing a map of Ohio. Every county in Ohio is red. And they say the following: Vivek won every single county in Ohio. Well, of course he did. First of all, it's basic math, because that meme and that map are misleading. If Casey Putsch got 140,000, 150,000 some odd votes, he wouldn't have the majority in any county, let alone one county. It just means that the vast majority of all of the people in every county voted for Vivek Ramaswamy on the Republican ticket, who asked for a Republican ticket. So what? It means nothing. It shows nothing. Amy Acton was patting herself on the back because she won her primary. She ran against nobody. So a map of Ohio has all the blue, all the counties labeled in blue, and they're all colored blue with the blue crayon. And people share that around and go, look, Amy Acton won every county in Ohio. Well, yeah. She ran unopposed, and she won the majority of the vote. Unopposed. Which means the best person to run on the Democrat ticket in Ohio is a pill-popping wino who slurs her speech, sounds like she's COVID jabbed, and engaged in the COVID lockdowns, causing people to lose their businesses, their livelihoods, and their lives via suicide. That's the best person and the only person the Democrats can put up. And the only person, again, that Republicans can put up, that the vast majority of them voted for, was a Vivek Ramaswamy who profited from the COVID lie in Ohio. It just, again, it blows me away. It blows me away. Again, the comments section on my post is interesting because it proves my point. It proves that endless people who don't live here don't know what's going on. They throw around the name calling. Casey Putsch is racist. Next time, pick a better candidate who's not a racist. He's not a racist. He's highlighting what everybody knows, that there is race preference. And among Indians, they prefer their own, just like most other races prefer their own. But when it comes to fraud and scamming people, they're really good at it, and they get away with it. And if you can pay off a politician who sits in a particular office like Secretary of State, Treasurer, AG, what have you, they're not going to look into it. They're not going to look into fraud. They're not going to hold fraudsters accountable. It's not going to happen. Les Wexner has a lot of money. He moves a lot of money around. He launders it to people too. Happens all the time. They're also, again, these comments are hilarious because they're even saying, what, you think voting is a legit action and that it's, a proper activity that's logical and that there isn't any voter fraud? I never said that. I know there's voter fraud. There's always been. There always will be. When you have the establishment like Robert Sprague, who again is treasurer currently and running for Secretary of State, saying that we're going to have the most secure elections ever in Ohio, he's lying to you. He's lying. I could keep railing on about it, but I'm going to stop here. Again, Casey Putsch ran with $120,000. That came from real Ohioans, real donations, and some of his own money after he sold some of his own automobiles to help pay for it. Vivek Ramaswamy ran with $50 million. I don't care what slogan gets used. Make America great again, America first, blah, blah, blah. They're all slogans. It's just marketing and advertising and all of that stuff. Hooking your name to, again, a slogan, a tagline, a sign, a whatever. That's not real individualized America, though. Real individualized America is exactly what Casey Putsch did. He was frustrated. He had the experience. The man's an inventor, for God's sakes. And then at the exact same time, he's talking about the fraud that exists in this state. But there were too many people who, again, don't do the research. They don't read. They can't see it at face value because they're still brainwashed, even after the COVID lie. And everything from 2020 and every year previous, they're still brainwashed. Again, this is the demoralization play that gets played out in civilizations to destroy them. When your choices are an anchor baby Indian who's a billionaire who stole his money from copious amounts of people and profited from fraud, lying, and death. And then the other option is a communist Jewish woman who profited from fraud, lying, and death. That's not a choice. I also put this post out there too. It was, again, a video of a woman being interviewed by a group called More Perfect Union, and they have a YouTube channel, which I highly recommend. But again, they're a nonprofit newsroom, apparently, and they are interviewing a woman having to do with a Mark Zuckerberg data center, approximately whatever it is, maybe 400 yards from where her and her husband lived. And their water quality is absolute garbage. The data center is completely destroyed, all of the water running into her house. And one of the people commented here also, and they said Columbus, Ohio, already put water restrictions in place from May to October. Again, this is exactly what Ramaswamy is endorsing. These data centers, again, are not for AI. They have to be for something else that's far more nefarious. I know people are saying that they're surveillance centers, basically, and they're just surveilling everybody and stealing people's information and XYZ. Well, if they're destroying the underground water, and they're destroying electricity and resources, and they're, of course, destroying land and trees and everything else, why on earth does anybody support any of this? Now I'm going to move on to education here, and as one might expect, levies were on the ballot all across the state of Ohio. In fact, there were approximately 70 to 74 school levies, which included property tax levies, income tax levies, bonds, and combinations of the lot there. The results, it says here, were basically unofficial, but there was a pass rate of roughly 50 to 65% statewide, varying by region and levy type. Again, I don't understand why people tax themselves into poverty. Northeast Ohio, for example, Cuyahoga and surrounding counties, dozens on the ballot, levies that is. 27, for example, in one 12-county snapshot. Many new income property tax increases failed, which is good, like Parma, Independence, Pickerington, while some renewals and additionals passed, like Lakewood with 66% saying yes, and Solon, Ohio, 67% saying yes. It says Central Ohio, there were several failures, including, again, Pickerington's 1.25% income tax, where 63% approximately voted no. Good for them. They have brains in their skulls. And then here in Southwest Ohio, only 2 of 7 passed. At least some people are starting to wake up to the business of tax levies. It's not everybody, but yeah, good. Keep your money. Keep more of your own money. Okay. Let me mention this too. This was tossed my way also by taxpayers for Westerville City Schools out of Westerville, Ohio. Of course, a school district I've covered at great length. In the last election, of course, they had 2 Somali women running for school board. One of them ended up winning or was selected or got on fraudulently or whatever. Her name, of course, is Anissa Liban. I've played audio of her before, written about her on Substack, the whole thing. The other woman, however, who also ran, is a Nafiso, if I'm saying that right, Jamali. I'm probably getting that wrong, don't really care. Either way, female Somali woman. And the taxpayers for Westerville City Schools put this out on Facebook and on X, and it says the following, that when that woman, the Jamali gal, ran unsuccessfully for the Westerville School Board last fall, we initially chose not to highlight her very troubling campaign finances. However, it's now worth noting that like Liban's campaign finance filings, Jamali's filings raise serious concerns, especially given the reports of home health care fraud in Columbus highlighted by Luke Rosiak at the Daily Wire. Notably, she operates one of those controversial home health care agencies. Beyond receiving contributions from others in the same industry, her own company loaned her campaign $14,200, with no evidence it was ever paid back. That loan, quote unquote, from her home healthcare business was about 70% of what she raised. She sure was determined to secure a seat on the Westerville School Board. These details raise serious questions that must be further investigated. And then they tagged a bunch of different people, all the news channels, Ohio Secretary of State, you name it, Columbus Dispatch, investigative reporter Mahik Cook, that gal, who again also loves Vivek Ramaswamy, too bad for her. Again, you can highlight all of this fraud, ladies and gentlemen, and it's important to do. I've done it myself. Again, very important. However, if there's no accountability and no one investigates who is in a position as a formal investigator, looks at the fraud, charges them with the crime, or at least brings them in for questioning, then what do you have? You have nothing. You're perpetuating the fraud. You're sweeping it under the rug, and you're allowing this kind of thing to take place. Now, here's the actual article again that was referenced here, and again, it's the Daily Wire. My apologies, but either way, it's legit. Inside Ohio's home health empire: 7 buildings, 288 Medicaid companies, $250 million. A single landlord owned 7 desolate buildings, filled with home healthcare companies billing taxpayers millions. We went to see them. It says this is part 2 of Medicaid Millions, quote unquote, a Daily Wire series exposing billions of dollars in dubious personal services payments where people are paid to spend time with their own family. Columbus, Ohio, the front doors are open, but inside, the 7 massive complexes appear to be largely abandoned. Smoke detectors chirp for new batteries. No one is there to change them. Some office doors have signs suggesting the owner is out to lunch, but the piles of mail outside tell a different story. Stray cats have taken up residence in the parking lots. The government is under the impression that all of the office buildings hold thriving healthcare businesses. The 7 buildings alone, East Dublin Granville Road in Columbus, Ohio, are filled with hundreds of office suites, all owned by a company named Cordoba Real Estate. A large majority of the tenants in the buildings bill Medicaid, the taxpayer-funded medical program for the impoverished, as a home health care quote-unquote business that provides low-skilled, usually non-medical care to elderly or disabled people. The Daily Wire has spent weeks analyzing Medicaid data released by the Trump administration's Department of Government Efficiency in an effort to weed out wasteful government spending. The buildings owned by Cordoba stuck out, each housing dozens of businesses that bill Medicaid. In all, the Cordoba-owned buildings in Columbus house 288 businesses registered with Medicaid, the Daily Wire investigation found. Together, they charged taxpayers more than $250 million between 2018 and 2024. That's in a city where only 6,273 people, 75 or older, are on Medicaid. The Medicaid program has exploded in Ohio thanks to a waiver that expanded the medical program to include wide-ranging at-home services such as homemaking, quote-unquote, allowing taxpayer money to be spent for tasks such as making the bed or working on a hairdo. Ohio has 3,700 companies with home health in their name, according to a review of Ohio business records. In particular, it's blown up in Columbus, which is home to the second largest Somali population in the United States. And there you go. The program has little oversight with most of the so-called care happening inside individual homes, making it susceptible to fraud and abuse. There's no evidence to indicate that Cordoba has any role in the Medicaid companies housed in its buildings. It sold 2 of the 7 buildings this January. Yet the home health businesses have been established as if by a machine, with some sharing nearly identical signs that suggest coordination rather than rivalry. One sign for National Home Healthcare Services, LLC, explained that the home Medicaid businesses often don't provide healthcare at all. They provide services like companionship and conversation, quote-unquote, and light housekeeping, quote-unquote. Next to it hung a sign proclaiming, quote, "We are on break right now," unquote. Another sign for Guidance Home Healthcare, LLC, was graphically identical, even with the same slogan, quote, "Your peace of mind in home healthcare," unquote. Only the phone number was different. At one Cordoba building, I finally located a rare home health business with someone in it, GC Home Healthcare LLC. Asked how he recruits employees. Abid, the owner's son, said employees and patients come as a package. In 70% of cases, the employees are being paid to spend time with their own family members, he explained. Quote, "Usually the patient, they have someone in their family that has the qualifications to be an aide, CPR and everything. So they just come to us," unquote. After getting a note from a doctor vouching for the elder's need for personal service, he explained. The family member of the elderly person isn't set up to bill Medicaid, so a company stands in the middle. We're taking a small cut because Medicaid pay us and we pay them their hours, Abid explained. He said the number of hours depends on the doctor recommendations, but it's often an hour a day. Quote, "You expect them to take time off work to take care of their relatives. There has to be some sort of benefit," unquote, he added. Asked why people won't simply help their aging parents without billing Medicaid, he said, quote, "Well, if the government will pay you to do it, it's an incentive. I think most people nowadays, they don't really care as much," unquote. Each animated graphic shows a Cordoba property along with its owners or managers of every company located inside that is billing Medicaid, as well as the names of any other businesses in the building that received money from the state of Ohio. Medicaid is a joint federal-state program, so some of the state total may be included in the Medicaid figure. The data comes from federal Medicaid and Ohio spending records. Now, this is a long article, and in the meat of the article, in the middle of it, he basically, again, is knocking on all these addresses and knocking on these doors and occasionally interacts with an individual. And again, they act in typical fashion. "What are you doing here?" they'll say, and "Why are you only knocking on Somali doors?" And when they're asked questions about the amount of money that they've raised, they say, I don't know what you're talking about. I've never even heard of that. You need to get out of here. You don't work here. It's time for you to leave." I mean, they just create a commotion. But toward the bottom of the article, it says, who's behind Cordoba? It says, of the 5 buildings in Columbus with the most Medicaid companies, 3 are owned by Cordoba Real Estate Group, LLC, which is managed by New Jersey men Israel Steinberg and Isaac Nassar, according to business records, every single time. Nassar told the Daily Wire that he doesn't have visibility into what the businesses are doing inside his buildings. Quote, "I am just a landlord. Nassar, who lives in a multi-million-dollar house and owns multiple airplanes, said, quote, "I don't have the slightest clue what tenants are billing out. It's not really my purview." Steinberg did not return a request for comment. I bet he did. There has been controversy surrounding the company's other properties in Ohio. In 2008, the same pair were part of the ownership group for an apartment complex in Columbus that suffered an electrical fire that killed 5 people. In 2014, a 4-year-old was killed after falling into an open oven that the tenant had restored to using to heat the home. Police said it was the only available source of heat, according to the Columbus Dispatch, which characterized the apartment complex as a slum and a very bad place to live. Steinberg and Nassar were credited by the apartment complex for working to fix the troubled, quote-unquote, property they inherited, the report said. In 2009, Steinberg was also working for a company at the center of a mortgage and real estate scam that culminated in a suspect committing suicide in a cemetery. At the center was a developer called Stillwater, which received loans from a firm called I.L. Kesef to fix up rundown houses. The fix-up money disappeared and the houses remained boarded up and broken down, according to a report also from the Columbus Dispatch. Kesef's Larry Kushner, every single time, was arrested for unrelated real estate fraud charges in New Jersey at the same time that problems became apparent in Columbus. Stillwater then hired Kushner's colleague Steinberg to clean up the mess, quote-unquote, the Dispatch reported. Steinberg was paid more than $300,000 in fees from Parkview in 2004 and received a $4.5 million Stillwater loan in 2005, but he was never implicated. It said, Steinberg was not implicated in any of the firm's wrongdoing, according to the report. Now, Steinberg is the unlikely figure at the center tying together hundreds of companies billing Medicaid, unquote. Here's what I've done. Over in my X account, I just reposted this 18-minute video of Luke Rosiak, again, laying all of this out in video form. And it's overwhelming. Again, this information is out there, and this, of course, is what Kim Georgeton brought up, Casey Putch's pick for lieutenant governor, is that American citizens and Ohio citizens are finding this fraud and investigating this fraud where government is not. This is government's job. This is what they're supposed to be doing. But of course, they're participating in it. They're stealing from Americans just like Somalis are. And unfortunately, they're creating a backlog of investigations and crimes here that they'll never catch up to. They're just running out the clock. They're just letting all of this go on, all of this pass. They're not looking into anything. It's just too deep. It's too deep and it's too vast. And they're not pulling the trigger on anybody because, again, what? They're afraid of being called a name? You're only going after Somalis. What are you, racist? No. Go after people who are committing crimes. Doesn't matter their race. This is at face value. This is face value stuff. It is out in the open, as the documentary there, and of course their video journalists openly say, and their writing openly says, yes, it's out in the open. These healthcare centers line Cleveland Avenue in Columbus. They're on billboards. Here's how you can make money. Want to be in the healthcare business? I mean, they advertise their fraud. They advertise it. It's amazing to me. Again, Ohio has its hands full. Every state has its hands full. And there aren't arrests being made. There aren't massive RICO cases being put together here, or if they are being put together, of course, the public isn't aware of any of it. Complaints get filed to the Secretary of State's office. We don't receive replies back. Again, government, where investigations go to die, apparently. It's amazing. So, yeah. It's demoralizing. There's no doubt about it. But something has to give here. Again, Vivek Ramaswamy, just to round this out here before I end the episode, Vivek Ramaswamy was on Sean Hannity's show apparently the other day. And again, my vision for Ohio is higher paychecks, less taxes, and better schools. Where have you heard that before? Every politician who's ever lived. Every scam artist who's ever run for office, they all say the same things. Better schools, more pay, lower taxes. Vote for Vivek Ramaswamy. They all say it, and they never, ever deliver. Not once have they ever delivered on any of that, because they can't. Kim Georgeton, again, Casey Putch's lieutenant governor pick, she thanked everybody for participating in the campaign and voting. She said, again, it was a great turnout, even for an individual who, again, didn't have nearly as much money, clearly, as Vivek Ramaswamy. But she said, again, that there were 3 issues that she was interested in and that Vivek knows how to reach out to her. But she essentially said that there were 3 things that she wanted Vivek to do before, again, the election takes place and make these promises. Again, a promise from Vivek Ramaswamy is an impossibility. It's not going to happen. She wants a moratorium on data centers. That won't happen. It's not going to happen. She wants no property taxes for individuals who own their own residential property in their own homes. That won't happen either. He won't do that. And the last one was disincentivize businesses from relying on H-1B visas. Again, you have to be kidding me. He's not going to do that either. He's running on this. These are his sticking points. Like, these are the things that he enjoys the most. So he isn't going to change. Ohioans just have to feel the pain. And they have to see who they actually voted for. Again, he's a brown Mike DeWine. So buckle up, because it's going to get real interesting. If people who voted for Casey Putch don't vote for Vivek Ramaswamy, then Amy Acton wins. Again, they're 2 heads of the same snake as far as I'm concerned. I don't think it's going to matter one way or another. And I know Ohio isn't alone in all of this. Believe me, I'm well aware. This is within every state. Every state has this problem. These people are selected, they're placed, and therein lies the issue. So moving forward, I would love for people to, again, snap out of the trance that they're in. People who are legal citizens within these states need to start running for these positions. I understand it's daunting. I understand it's overwhelming. It's clearly costly. I'm well aware of that. But the establishment has a grip on endless people. All of the people, again, on X saying that the establishment didn't win and the establishment's being destroyed, those people are conning themselves. And then they're conning the people who are blindly believing them. The establishment is well in place in every single state, and it's remarkably problematic. But individual citizens have got to stand up, and then they have to expose these individuals who, again, win these particular offices or are placed within these particular positions. And then hopefully, enough people wake up throughout that process of feeling the pain that they recognize that they made horrible decisions in the past and they'll never make those decisions again. I pray that that's the case, but it just apparently, again, means that people have to feel the pain between now and then. So, not sure what else to say. I could keep rambling, I guess, but it's frustrating because there is a civil war that's continuously going on in our country. A lot of backstabbing, a lot of turncoats, a lot of brainwashed, a lot of division. There's nothing unifying about that. But the thing that will unify people, again, is accountability. And until we have that, I think people can expect more division, which is unfortunate because you lose people in division all of the time. So I'm going to leave it there, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for listening as always. Have a great weekend. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there, and I will catch you on Monday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.